Edit audio.
Girl, let's talk about how last year I thought I was losing my absolute mind. I just would walk into rooms and forgot exactly why I even walked into that room. I would read paragraphs of books or documents, emails, even over and over and over again, and not remember what the hell I just read. I just thought, what's going on? Do I have early onset Alzheimer's? Like, what is happening with me? So at first I thought, you know what, maybe it's stress because, yeah, I'm stressed. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, because, yeah, that too, I'm getting older. And yeah, those things are true. But as I did more digging and thinking about what all is happening in my life, in your life, I realized that those were just really incomplete parts of the actual picture of what was causing my little brain fog. So we're going to talk about it. Hello, and welcome back to the Be Well Sis podcast. I am your host, Dr. Cassandre Dunbar. How has life been treating you? But more importantly, how have you been treating yourself? Me, I have been, you know what I mean? You already know how I've been. So we're going to skip over all of that and we're going to hop right into this episode of the Not Well Sis series. And in today's episode, we are talking about brain health because, baby, I was shook. I was asking my husband, like, babe, am I okay? And he's like, I'm not sure. So one of the things that I know I am not alone in is that whenever I find myself trying to quote unquote decompress, I find myself scrolling for what starts out as minutes and turns into hours on end, whether it's on Instagram or TikTok. And what I think is decompressing me is actually making things much worse. I essentially, and many of us do the same thing, is we hand over all of our downtime to these algorithms. And again, they make things so much worse. We're already stressed. It's going to compound our stress because of the things that we're looking at. So when I sat back and thought about all the things that I was going through, I realized that it's not because I was weak, because your girl ain't weak, and neither are you, but it's because of this really crucial place that I am and maybe you are in your life. So not only are we stressed, not only are we spending way too much time consuming short form content, but we're also, if you're watching this or listening to this, you also are probably in your mid to late 30s, 40s. So you're probably in that perimenopause stage as well. So when we think about perimenopause, we often think about what it's doing to our reproductive systems and how our cycles are changing. And while that's true, perimenopause also plays a huge role in our cognition. So as the levels of estrogen are fluctuating, that also is going to cause things like brain fog. So now we're putting these two things together. We're putting together our desire or our habits, our bad habits of scrolling endlessly through and watching short form content, in addition to what's happening to us on a hormonal level. And that is a recipe for brain fog to the utmost degree and some shifts in our cognition even. So to start off, let's talk about what is happening whenever we are scrolling for, let's just say, even 10 minutes. When we consume a lot of short form content, this is going to change the dopamine cycle in our brain. So think about every time we get a notification. Let's say it's like a video that you enjoy or a like that you got on something that you posted. This is going to cause the brain's reward center to give you a little push of dopamine. So it feels good, right? And that little jolt of dopamine tells us that was so good. Let's do it one more again. Let's do it again. And what the research shows us is that over time, the brain prunes this neural pathway in order for us to get our dopamine hits even faster. And a shorter reward pathway are linked to more impulsive behavior, along with less capacity for delayed gratification. We are already in a I need it now, I need it fast society. And our engaging with short form content makes it even worse. So essentially, we're training our brains to want dopamine faster and want even more of dopamine the more we spend time scrolling. So now, whenever we put the phone down, our dopamine levels dip below a baseline. So whenever you feel like you need to constantly be on your phone, It is not because there's anything inherently wrong with you, but it's because this is exactly how these apps were designed. They were designed for our attention. They were designed for us to be addicted to them. There are all types of lawsuits happening as we speak based off of that. So let's talk about some research, and I have some notes. Dr. Gloria Mark spent nearly 20 years tracking focus in human subjects. Her finding was that the average person in 2021 could focus on one screen for 47 seconds. In 2004, that finding was 150 seconds, and that is a 100-second decline in under 2 decades. A 2024 study found that heavy short-form video consumers had measurably lower theta brainwave activity in the prefrontal cortex. And this is the exact region that is responsible for focused attention and cognitive control. To take it another step further, a study of over 1,000 college students confirmed that short-form video addiction impairs attentional control both directly and by eroding the brain's ability to regulate focus over time. You're not choosing to be distracted. The feed was designed to make it feel like sustained attention was impossible, and it's not. If you are in perimenopause, what else is happening to your brain hormonally? So the study of women's health across the nation followed 16,000 women ages 40 to 55. What it found was that 31% of premenopausal women reported feeling forgetfulness. That number changed to 44% in early perimenopause. So nearly half of us are reporting memory changes, but being told that it's simply just stress. So according to a study in 2023 by the University of Colorado, the functions most impacted by perimenopause include the following. So we have verbal learning and verbal memory, which means the ability to find the words you're trying to say, processing speed, attention and working memory, and executive function in women. In a 2025 study across 9,500 participants, confirmed that women in early perimenopause perform worse on working memory and attention tasks, and worse on a verbal memory compared to women who hadn't yet entered that transition. So what we have deduced is that estrogen is not simply a reproductive hormone. It supports active cognition by enhancing synaptic activity. So it plays a huge role in how our neurons fire, how often they fire, and just brain communication all around. This is especially true in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the region of the brain that is responsible for our memory. So as our estrogen levels fluctuate during perimenopause, this makes those connections become unstable. And when the estrogen levels drop, the hippocampus now loses one of its key allies in doing its job. And one thing that I really want to highlight is that for most women, these changes are temporary. And studies suggest that verbal memory often improves and resolve post-menopause. So that is good news. Where we are as we speak in this moment is knowing that our brains are battling two different things, like I mentioned before. So we're battling the algorithms and battling what is naturally happening within our bodies as our estrogen levels fluctuate and then eventually decline. So our perimenopausal brains are working so much harder. And our habit of scrolling, which we disguise as rest, is only making things that much harder for our brains. And I mentioned stress before. Let's add in stress officially as a third variable. So a 2022 review identified financial and work stress as direct contributors to poor cognition during the menopausal transition. And what does scrolling the algorithm do? Is also going to elevate cortisol. Cortisol is going to activate the nervous system in a way that is detrimental. So what we think we're doing to decompress, to relax, it's our me time, again, is doing the exact opposite of what we want it to do. It's making us more stressed and not less. So what can we do about it? Because I hate to come to you with things, with problems, with no real solution. So there are solutions. The first thing, you already know what I'm going to say, stop scrolling so much. And I'm talking to myself and it hurts. It's painful because I love me a TikTok. I love me a reel, but it's doing more harm than good. One of the things that I have told myself that I was going to do this year, and I've been pretty good about it, has been spending less time on the phone. So when I would spend hours and on end on TikTok scrolling, I now am consuming YouTube videos, or I'm reading Substack articles, or I'm reading books, or I'm listening to books, or I try to cook again intentionally. Instead of cooking several meals in one day, so meal prepping, I instead prefer to just cook my meals as they go, especially breakfast. It's my time to spend some time making my eggs or whatever with phone free and being really intentional about my time. Has it helped? It has. It has. Again, I really enjoy being on the phone. I like to know what's going on in the world. I like to know what's going on in pop culture, what's going on in the community. Like, I love to know. I love comedy, all those things. But the short form content that I was consuming, the amount of short form content that I was consuming was making me feel like I was losing my shit. So, of course, we're going to reduce the amount of time that we're spending on our phones scrolling, but we're also going to do some other things. I want to talk about some evidence-based supplements that have been found to be helpful as it relates to brain health, especially during the perimenopausal period. But I will say this, I'm a medical doctor. I am not your personal medical doctor. So we know that supplements can interact with different medications that you may be taking, along with different maybe disease process that may be happening in your world. So super important before you start a new supplement to speak to your healthcare provider before doing so. So with that being said, let us start. So a lot of these you've heard before. They're talked about in the mainstream really, really often. So let's start off with omega-3s. Okay, so according to research, 1 to 2 grams of omega-3s are going to be helpful because they're going to support the hippocampal function associated with memory. Number 2, we have magnesium glycinate. So the recommended dosage is 310 to 320 milligrams per day. And a 2023 study with 6,000 participants ages 40 to 73 found that higher magnesium levels linked to brains appearing 1 year, quote, younger by age 55. And this effect was even more pronounced in women. Third one is vitamin D3. We are always talking about vitamin D3. It's so, so important. And most of us are unfortunately deficient. So the dosage for the vitamin D3 that is going to be necessary for each individual is going to be personal based off of your own vitamin D3 stores. However, vitamin D3 is going to affect neuroplasticity, of course, bone health, and cognitive function. Estrogen decline is also linked with reduced vitamin D3 effectiveness. So this is even more crucial during the perimenopausal years. Next, we have our B vitamins, and those are just going to depend on what your labs indicate that you're lacking in, if any. And why they're important is because they help to metabolize something called homocysteine, which is a marker within our bodies that is associated with brain atrophy as well as cognitive decline. Low B6 in particular is associated with lower cognitive scores in perimenopausal women. Next is creatine. So the recommended dosage is about 3 to 5 grams daily. And this is because the brain relies on phosphocreatine for metabolism to produce energy. And studies show that improved short-term memory and cognitive performance in adults ages 45 to 64 with the use of creatine. And there's even more current emerging evidence of mood improvement as well as the decline in brain fog symptoms in patients who have perimenopause. Next, we have ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is an adaptogen that is shown to reduce cortisol. It is found to improve cognitive function and memory in healthy, stressed adults. So this is especially relevant given cortisol's compounding effects with perimenopausal cognition. So those are some supplements that, again, I want you to look into, speak to your healthcare provider about. Maybe these could be some helpful additions to your routine. The next thing I want you to look into is to actually having a conversation with your physician, getting your labs drawn. When you're getting your labs drawn, I want you to think about some specific things that you can ask for to see if there are some deficiencies that are causing some of the brain fog and some of the cognitive deficits that you may be experiencing. So the first one that we're going to start off with is the thyroid panel. So this is not just a TSH alone. So not just a thyroid stimulating hormone alone. We want to look at all of it. So TSH, free T3, free T4. We want to look at reverse T3, anti-TPO, anti-thyroglobulin antibodies, all of those things. The reason for this is because thyroid dysfunction affects 1 in 10 women. That's pretty common. And it mirrors perimenopause almost exactly. How? With the brain fog, the fatigue, the weight fluctuations, mood swings, so on and so forth. So it may not be that you're in perimenopause. It may not be that it is overwhelming stress or even your screen time. It might just be that your thyroid function is inadequate. Next, you want to ask for your vitamin D levels. So deficiency is widespread. So most North Americans have a vitamin D deficiency because we typically are indoor people and where we don't get enough sunlight. So we know that is going to affect a couple of things. So neuroplasticity, immune function, of course, bone health. And like I mentioned before, declining estrogen reduces the body's ability to even use that D3 effectively. Next, we have our vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 deficiency can cause neurological symptoms, including memory problems along with brain fog. A 2025 study linked B12 to structural brain biomarkers in older adults. So this is worth investigating. Next, we have ferritin / an iron panel. Ferritin is going to drop. So that is the stored version of our iron. It's going to drop before anemia appears on a standard CBC. So low iron is going to cause fatigue and brain fog, and this is often mistaken as a hormonal change. Heavy perimenopausal bleeding is also a common driver and also something that is seen pretty routinely. Next, we have our insulin. Let's take a look at what is happening there. So fasting insulin along with the hemoglobin A1C are important things to look into because insulin resistance is going to accelerate perimenopause and is strongly linked to our brain health. Insulin resistance is often called type 3 diabetes by researchers because elevated blood sugar is often associated with an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Moving on, we're going to ask for a standard hormone panel. So estradiol, FSH, LH, progesterone, free and total testosterone are all really important things to consider, especially if you're in the age range of perimenopause and you're experiencing symptoms. So this is going to help to establish a hormonal balance, especially if you're considering hormonal replacement therapy. I want to say this, during the perimenopausal period, it is tough because our hormonal levels are fluctuating. At the time of getting the labs drawn, it makes sure that your levels are completely normal because it's a snapshot of what's happening at that time and not telling an entire story. But it's important to get anyway. Next, we have things that we don't talk about so much. So homocysteine, which I mentioned earlier. So chronically elevated homocysteine levels are associated with brain atrophy along with vascular dementia risk. And it's often correctable with B vitamin supplementation. So this is something that should be asked for and should be assessed to see if a simple fix such as a vitamin B is going to help alleviate some of the symptoms that you're experiencing. Next, we have high inflammatory markers, namely high sensitivity CRP. And this is because estrogen has anti-inflammatory properties. And as those levels fluctuate / decline, it's going to make it more likely that we have elevated inflammation. So establishing a baseline for our CRP is going to allow us to flag any elevated cardiovascular and cognitive risks. And last but not least is our magnesium levels. So getting the RBC, so the magnesium that is attached to the red blood cell, is super important. As we know, we've talked about, or magnesium is often commonly talked about in media because deficiency of magnesium contributes to things like poor sleep, muscle pain, weakness, anxiety, and cognitive fatigue. So getting an assessment of where your magnesium levels are going to be really helpful in getting together a plan as to what is going to be helpful for you. So I will say this as we close. You are not broken. If you have been stressed out about like what's going on with me, I don't remember things, like who am I even? There's so many factors at play. So again, screen time, again, what are your labs looking like? And lastly, again, what are some supplements that might be helpful for you? I have all of these linked down below in the show notes. So helpful worksheets for you to bring with you to your healthcare provider and to talk about, to discuss, and start to look at. And I also have linked some of the research that I have found that might be helpful if you want to nerd out like I do and read the actual studies. So you are going to be okay, friend. I'm going to be okay. You're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We got this. This season in our lives, perimenopause is a transition, and it is a completely normal transition. And it's a time where we have to kind of get to know ourselves and reacclimate ourselves. And we also have to baby ourselves a little bit more and be a little bit more intentional about how we care for ourselves and how we spend our time. So friend, you got this. I got this. We got this. As always, thank you so much for joining. I am so glad you're here. And until next time, be well, sis. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be Well, Sis. If you'd like to get in touch with us, there's a link in the show notes. Be Well, Sis is hosted by me, Dr. Cassandre Dunbar, and produced by Edit Audio. Don't forget to hit follow so you never miss an episode. Until next time, be well, sis.